Thank you for joining, Ananda and Jimmy. So you can see Vasco Figueiredo as his name, but we will call him Jimmy. Is his name for the people of LAR? Let's say the people of LAR. So today we are here to talk about, let's say, about writing. The presence of daily life on writing, how can you connect them, what's your process on writing, your rituals or habits, and how do you see these, do you see it as more like a hobby or something that is even more than that, like a healing process even. So we will try to talk about some of these topics for the next half an hour with Ananda and Jimmy. So I would just ask you to introduce yourselves first, and then we can jump into this conversation. We are already live on our website, LARCLUB.x, so you can see us there. So I would just start by asking you, Ananda, to start introducing yourself so that people get to know you better.
All right, great. It feels strange to be live because I'm just looking at my screen. No, my name is Ananda. I'm 27 years old and I work for L'Oréal. I just moved to Switzerland and I wrote a book. It came out last year in July. It's a poetry book. It's called Poems of Recovery, and it's about the process I went through when I was recovering from my eating disorder. So that's a little bit about me. I'm a coffee to go addict, and Brussels definitely had better coffee than Geneva so far.
Good. Thanks a lot for also for joining and accepting our invitation.
Thanks for having me.
So Jimmy, tell us more about this mysterious human being that we see here on our screens.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Miguel. Thank you, Ananda. Thank you, Lar, for inviting me. And nice to meet you, Ananda. I was checking your work and it seems really interesting. You didn't say the book name. It's your
Poems
book
of Recovery. Yes.
Poems of Recovery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. I'm an amateur writer. I also publish photography, and LARCLUB was gentle enough to have me here to talk a little bit. So I accepted to offer somewhat of a contrast to what Ananda has to say, probably. And thank you so much.
Yeah, it's always good to have, also some contrast to have a good discussion, right? That's a good point. Yeah, good. So I think we can dive into the conversation, right? I would start by the first topic I was mentioning before, which is the presence of daily life on writing and how to split both of them. Like how can we split what we live and what we write, or what do you think about it? Like, do you think a good writing necessarily needs to be regarding something you live and something you really experience so that you can write better about it? Or maybe you are very inventive and you can think about some crazy stuff that you don't need to live those things to be able to write about it. So I would like to just get your perspective and kick off the discussion, because in the end this is a discussion, right?
All right, Ananda, I'll let you go first on this.
Being put on the spot. No, I wanted to say the same. So no, I think it depends on your goal. Because for me, when I'm writing, so I have a diary, and here I try to write in every day a little bit just before bed or in the morning to just get my thoughts on paper instead of in my head. And then the poems I was writing when I felt the need to write. So if I was struggling with myself or with my self-image, then I would write the poems. But if you're writing a fiction book or a whole story, then I feel like you should take the time to sit down and think about it. that's also why I decided to write poems, because I didn't have to sit down really, because I could just write it on my phone, and then I collected them all together. Like it could be when I was walking or in the train, because I thought if you write a real book, like a whole text, you have to sit down. It takes so much time. So for me, it was more also about efficiency and quickly writing down how I felt. So I would say it depends on the goal of your writing. I will hand over to Jimmy.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I also have the same experience regarding that I need to put stuff on the paper. Like I'll have a good thought that I want to elaborate on, and it definitely needs to go either onto the paper or onto the phone. It needs to go somewhere, otherwise it just disappears. And a lot of times it's really tragic, because I think
Yeah.
there's so much good stuff that you think, and then you just can't remember.
And
So I'll just say
sometimes it's the opposite. It happens to me as well.
Yeah,
Sometimes, you
true.
know, it's also the opposite. I have also the feeling that sometimes I'm like, yeah, because I also like to write, and I was laughing a bit regarding what Ananda was saying, because I'm trying to write a book for almost 7 years, so clearly not efficient. And I was just, remembering that sometimes I'm like so into something, and I get an idea, and then I'm like, whoa, this is so cool, and I write and so on, and then the day after I'm reading what I was writing, and I was like, maybe,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's interesting, the thought that you were talking about of writing down things, because it can happen as well that you remember something and then it just vanishes, and then you're like, damn, it was good.
So
I
it's
try
like
to write down my dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah, because dreams you forget, and if you
Yeah.
write them down, you remember.
Yes.
Which reminds me that I need to write down my dreams of this week, probably.
You remembered your dreams of this week? Or
For today, yes,
okay.
but
Okay.
for now.
maybe.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
yeah.
Ananda, do you think it's like a little catalyst for you, just writing it down, then coming back to it, and just
I read it back to see, because, well, I write partly to write down my feelings, to write down what I've been through. And then when I read it back, I'm like, things are not so bad, you've come a long way. Because sometimes you get into this mood of, oh my God, I've achieved nothing, or this year was, I don't know, like I'm in the same spot as I was 1 year ago. I have the same feelings. But then when you read back to what you did, then you actually realize that a lot has happened and you're not in the same spot. Like kind of a reminder. Or sometimes I look back at decisions I made and I'm like, yeah, but why did I do that? But then when I read it back, I'm like, okay, I made the decision at that time that I thought was the best decision. So in that sense, it helps me a lot. But yeah, what you said with a book, if I would write a real book, like not poetry, I would go crazy as well with the story and everything. I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd be too impatient.
Well, that's a good analysis. Now that I think about it, maybe that's the reason why I just turned out this way. Yeah, maybe these 7 years
but
of trying.
but it's also really like cool and challenging what you're doing. And I want to add that what you're doing, Miguel, is what I'm trying to accomplish right now. Just extend the duration of what I'm writing. So extend the subject, even if it's a little bit artificially. Just try and write a little bit more about it, and just keep extending. It's really hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, I think I think in the end, I have the feeling that we all start in the same way. We have thoughts, we have sentiments and experiences, and as of the moment we want to write them down, we write them down, and then we decide to do something with it. Because I can only talk for myself, but I started like writing little stuff, not really poetry, but just 5 phrases about something, and then I would try to write some poetry, and then another different type of phrases, and then I ended up with like 10 pages of just scattered stuff. And then I was like, well, could be nice, to also to try to put this in together in following a story.
Yeah, a small collection.
Yes, it's like you can do it in different ways. Like I see a bit poetry sometimes like that, like what Ananda did. It's like little stories, you know. And you also have books like that, right? At least I see it a bit in that way, if you can say that.
We call it the coleção de contos.
Yes.
Let's say.
Yes,
Exactly.
Indeed. So Ananda, in the end of this conversation, you will be able to start, going to Portugal and give a press conference for your next book, and you'll say, guys, this is a conto de histórias, and they will be like, whoa,
I'm not sure if I will publish another book. No.
Yeah, that's also an interesting point, because sometimes how do you see it? Like we had another topic, which was the healing process through writing. So for you, what was your experience on writing the poems of recovery, and what was in the end your outcome, let's say, what you have achieved for yourself, and how do you see it next? Do you see it as something you want to keep on doing, or it was like a one-off event?
For me, the writing actually is the easy part, which you're not going to be happy when I say this. The writing is the easy part. And for me, my story was very personal. So I didn't think about the consequences. And I just published it, and I was like, let's go. And then I was in the newspaper, everywhere in the Netherlands, everywhere in Belgium, in podcasts, on TV. There will be still some other things coming, and everybody suddenly knew my story. So not just my friends, but also my family, but also my colleagues, my boss, my boss's boss, everybody. And in the beginning, I was really doubting, do I do a different name? Do I do my own name? But if you don't use your own name, you also lose your network that you have, that if you're not a well-known author, you need. And so I was like, okay, let's market this. But in that moment, or even in that year, I was not fully recovered. So it was very confronting. So I felt like coming out with my story, having people ask questions was even more of a healing process than the writing itself. So if you publish something personal, think about it, or just go with it and do it and see what happens. But take a step back and be like, okay, is this really what I want? Because
I have a question. Do you feel if it wasn't as personal, you could still tell the same, like people would still relate to the story? Do you feel like you would have the ability to write something that felt that personal, but it wasn't your personal experience? Do you think it affects the way people look at your work?
Yeah, because I think they feel my emotions in there. And if I would write about something that I haven't experienced, like, I don't know, let's say divorce or an alcohol problem, then the emotion is different. Because I feel like if you put your heart into the work that you do or into what you write, people will feel that. And if it's not genuine, people will feel that too. So I felt like that was the strength or power that I tried to build the marketing story around as well. Like, this is my work, this is coming from my heart. But for me, I still don't realize that other people read it. I'm like, yeah, it's just poems. It's I don't know how to explain. It's like when you write, you really do it for yourself and your own process. And I wanted to help other people, of course, but that's more in the back of your mind. I don't know.
And that's a bit there's an interesting point there, because I guess when you were writing it, I mean, how were you feeling? What were your feelings while you were writing it, like during the process? Because you are saying that it helped you a lot getting questions and answering to people. But I would also like to understand, and that's a very valid and interesting point. I think I didn't really think about that, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And I was just wondering, how can you correlated to the process before that, right? While writing your book.
Well, I remember for every poem, each moment I was in. So I know the timeline, I know why I wrote it. There was really, for me, it was not just the writing. I was trying to get healthy again, get my period back, recover from my eating disorder. So I was writing it down also for myself, the struggles that I had. And while writing, I was also thinking, okay, it needs to rhyme. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's one thing writing your
Yeah.
feelings down, but I was like, I wanted it to rhyme. So then sometimes I was like, okay, I'm feeling this, I'm doing this sentence, what rhymes with this word? So during the writing, I was also on, I think, rhymewords.com or something to see what matches. And then trying to find a bit of way in that to make sure the poems were also flowing nicely. Because for me, I know that there's some poetry that doesn't rhyme. It can be more little stories, but for me, it was way more logical to have it rhyme. So it was writing my feelings down, checking if if it rhymed with a word, checking if my English spelling was correct.
I saved one of your poems. Can I read it?
Yeah, I don't know which one it is.
It's a bit of a surprise. This was my favorite, so I just screenshot it. Maybe it came as no surprise that I had to buy a bigger clothing size, but I'd much rather thrive than just trying to survive. I am glad to be alive. I love this one. I connected
Yeah,
so
it's
much.
really nice.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I forgot that I wrote that.
And you just said you remember all the moments of your poems.
Yeah, I remember the moment because
Yeah, I'm
at
joking.
Right.
one
Yeah.
point, of course, when you recover, and then, yeah, clothes didn't fit. Okay, shitty. But then, yeah, buy new clothes.
Yeah. Did you feel like gaining weight was also a part of the healing process? Just getting
I
stronger
tried
and better.
to I tried to heal without gaining weight. Let me tell you, it didn't work.
Yeah.
It was definitely part of the process.
Yeah.
And well, as part of the process, did you have some kind of rituals or habits that you just talked about this website that you checked for some rhymes? I can see, it's super normal, I think, because I do the same.
I do the same.
You see, it's like sometimes like I'm trying to think about different words because it's normal, we are,
Yeah.
in the end, we are limited to an amount of words that we can kind of store, let's say. And even if you know more words, you don't always remember that, right? So it's like you need to use some tools to help you finding different and maybe better words for what you are actually writing. I do that through going to like the Portuguese website, like to check the words, like Priberam, and then I also read. So I have like a book next to me that I've been reading for a couple of months that is very rich in terms of, writing. In the end, it's Marcel Proust, The Search of Lost Time. So this is like a very, heavy, with a lot of super cool and, different words. And you just learn while you are reading, right? So it's also, for me, another way to try to find different words. It's not a matter of copying anything. It's just trying to find different words through different ways to express yourself. So I would like, Jimmy, you were talking about that. I would like to see, what are, for example, your habits or rituals to write.
Yeah. Actually, I do have a lot to say about that. I think I agree 100% with you. I want to add that sometimes searching for the right word is a bit like searching for what you were just about to say. So the more you chase it, the more it runs away from you. I like the bit. Sorry. And yeah. So, and I also want to add that sometimes you're just looking for the sound. You're looking for the beauty. You're looking for the poetry, and just looking at the library of words that you can use in a certain moment sometimes it even enlightens you in what you really want to say, in the music you want to express with what you're writing. So that's a very important part of the process and the healing process. It's just the beauty of it. If it's beautiful and you're writing about something sad, then it's easier to deal with. At least that's a big part of my process.
What's your thought, Ananda, on this?
No, I agree. And for me, I also didn't want to have too much repetition, because at one point you're out of rhyme words. And I was like, okay, but then I need to change the sentence because I've rhymed this word with this word, so it looks like this poem. And yeah, reading it back, and some things I did change before publishing it, because I was like, okay, this I don't want the world to know. I mean, I put a lot of stuff in the book,
Yeah,
but some
yeah.
things I was like, okay, maybe you change it a little bit so the story still stays the same, but the details of the story are not as much.
As
And
personal.
what you also have to think about actually when publishing a book, because I have a publisher and my story is personal, I had to make sure that the people in the book were not identifiable, because otherwise they would have to sign something. And of course, if you know me very well, you might know, oh, this could be this person, but there's no way that they can be identified by the poems.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, when I say my dad, my mother, or my brother, but like everybody knows I have parents.
Yes.
Everybody's a fictional character, even your mom and dad.
No, but that's also something you have to think about. Like, can this story or this poem hurt anybody's reputation in any way? If so, you need to ask their permission. So there's also a legal part. And also, is it plagiarism? Am I using something that I'm not allowed to use or that has been used before? The spelling, super important. You don't want to publish a book.
Did you ever feel like
spelling.
you were extracting too much meaning because you didn't want to put somebody in a difficult situation?
No, not at all. Because I didn't change any of the poems that were about people in that sense. And before it got published, I read those poems to the people themselves,
Oh,
which
beautiful.
is another process in itself too. That was scary.
Yeah, I can
But I
imagine.
thought that was important, yeah, for the both of us at that
That's
time.
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. I see also that we have, well, we have some people watching, and there was here a question asking if Poems of Recovery was your first writing experience. Well, yeah.
First publishing.
Yes. Let's say publishing experience at least.
Yeah, I wrote a thesis and stuff.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I used to write a lot of stories, but this was my first real write. Yeah, I don't know. Every writing is real, but
Yeah,
the one that I send
I
out to the
understand.
world.
Yeah.
And I write very long Instagram captions.
Okay.
But I recently cleaned up my Instagram, so you can't read them.
So you can check me on, and can you tell you can tell, because you have an Instagram for your book as well, right?
Yes, I do. So my Instagram is just my name with 4 A's at the end, and my Instagram for the book is Poems of Recovery, which I feel like I should be more active on, but yeah, it's just there.
Yes, people can go there. I mean, for the people that don't know you, they will go there and they will see quite some posts, so they will say, okay, let me read this and that,
But these are poems that are not in the book.
Ah, okay.
Because that's also a thing. You're only allowed to use 3 pages of your book as marketing. So there's 3 poems that I could use for marketing purposes. So anything that I add on that Instagram, it's extra work, so people get a bit familiar with the type of content that's in the book. Probably that's why, if the thing you read was not in the book but on the Instagram, it's why I didn't recognize it
Exactly.
immediately. I was like,
yeah, and it was an older post.
So that's, publishing is one thing, but there's actually a lot you have to think about, because you also have to design the book. You have to see every page how you want it to be. You have to make sure it all makes sense. Then You have to choose the cover, the visuals inside.
Was
Yeah,
that
just
also
go on.
was that
Jimmy.
also a part of the healing process, all the logistics?
No.
I guess more the opposite.
Yeah.
Well, when I had the first copy in hand, that felt quite. Actually, I didn't have the first copy in hand. It was my mom because I was abroad, so she had to validate it, which was also interesting. But yeah,
Your mom.
no, my real mom. Real mom. No hidden things here.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like, I know, okay, it was not the first one, but the first one for you. How was it? You know, like, because you write it and maybe you write it on your computer or paper, blah, blah, blah. You get together, you go through the whole process, and then you have your book. And then when you see the book, what was, your sentiments and what did you feel at that time, seeing it really
I
in a
cried.
physical form? Well, yes.
I cried. Yeah, I cried a lot. No, I cried, and then I was like, "Oh, that's nice." And then, yeah, now it becomes kind of normal in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I understand.
I
Everyone
think
wants to write a book here, right? That's what you mean. Like a lot of people are writing stuff. There are a lot
no,
of
I
books.
mean, once you've published it, you've held it in your hands. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, now I wrote a book. Anybody can do it, if they want to, but a lot of people don't do it. So that's what makes it more special, I guess. But the first month was super hectic. I mean, suddenly you're in the newspaper with these titles and people are saying things, and then it was on TV too, and I was just, but that was in the Netherlands, so I went to my parents, did all of that, went back to Belgium, so I was kind of like, okay, I'm taking a step back. But then I did the whole thing in Belgium again, and I was like, okay, like even moms messaging me, kids messaging me, older guys adding me on Instagram. That was really weird. Okay, great. That's part of it too. But in the end, I'm super thankful because, yeah, like I said, anybody can write a book. So it's, but they also said if it was poems about love or about flowers, that it probably wouldn't have gotten that much attention. Because especially with the lockdowns, I think eating disorders are really a thing. I also feel like I'm talking a lot. I want to give the word.
No, I mean, we
you.
want you to talk, huh?
We want to listen.
I'm tired, so I can't come up with any questions back.
It's fine because we have a chat, and on our chat we have quite some questions. So I will kind of merge the two questions I see here. So they were talking about any special ritual, like we were talking. If you just remember something like more, let's say, different, and what is your preferred environment to write? So the question is also for you, Jimmy. So maybe Jimmy, you can give a go, and then Ananda, you can go on.
The second part?
It's basically what is your favorite environment to write, and if you have some different type of ritual that makes you be more, how can I say, have a better imagination to write, for example.
All right, be a little more productive, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe this is where I offer the contrast. This is something I wrote before coming out on the talk show, and I when you talked about the healing process, I just thought of another word for it, which describes it better for me, which is like a scaring from scar process, in which I do have a ritual. Maybe it's not the most conventional, and it revolves. I feel like the better things that I write and the most emotional are the ones that I write when I'm in this particular mindset where I'm not okay, not necessarily depressed or whatever, but I'm not okay. There's something that needs to come out. So when I say it's a scarring process, it's just because when I do eventually get to the keyboard or get a pen to write, it's hurting so much already. And when you write, it doesn't stop hurting. You just use that pain to put it on the paper. And in that regard, it's a little bit like Ananda said, and I do agree a lot with her, because once you do put all that pain that you're feeling into the paper and you finally take a look at it, it's a bit like meditation. So you're just looking at your thoughts from outside, and suddenly the healing starts, and it hurts a lot. It's like sometimes you're writing and you're just writing. You write like, I don't know, 3 pages, and you don't feel it so much, and then you stop for a second, you go back, you read it, and it gets you emotional, it gets you in this zone. So I think that's the biggest part of the healing. That's where it comes from for me. Yeah.
Good. Very good. And for you, Ananda, what is your like favorite setup to write? I mean, it's
it used to be in my bed on my phone at night.
Yeah, okay.
Like before I went to sleep after the day. And I agree about the painful parts, but I also try to write down the good parts, because then when you're in a painful situation or you're feeling not okay, you can read back how you felt when you felt good. But I also remember one time I went on a walk without my phone. Then I had all these poems in my head, and I was like, great, I don't have any place to write them down. So now I always have a phone or a notebook or whatever with me, so I can scribble it down. But most of the poems I wrote in my bed on Google Drive, on Google Docs, and then later I made it nicer, but just to quickly note down something, or in my notes of my phone. I remember also, and this was after the book was published, that I was in a room in a hotel room in Paris, and I was like writing and crying, and just it could be anywhere, but usually in bed. It's not like I sit down, I take my laptop.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna write 10
It's
poems.
interesting, yeah, because sometimes I think about it, because I always write at night, and I always write in bed. When I go to bed before sleep, that's when I read, or that's when I write. And I usually, it's like these anti-procrastination thoughts of doing something useful on weekends. So usually I think like, well, this Saturday I will, after lunch I will spend 3 hours sitting down and writing and really moving this stuff, because I mean, yeah, let's, no, I don't do it. And it's like it's interesting, but it's really difficult for in my experience, because I only feel like writing when I know I should go to sleep, because it's already 2 or 3 a.m., and I'm like, shit, tomorrow I need to work, so what am I doing,
And then all these brilliant ideas come to your mind, and you're like, Miguel, you got to do it, man.
Well, I mean, at least if they were brilliant, I would be okay. I could. No, I'm joking, but yeah, it's definitely very interesting. So we are really reaching to an end. So thank you very much for being with us. There is a last question on the chat for you, Ananda, that we kind of touched it, but we went other ways, about a possible new book. So is this something you see in the it's the $1 million question. Is this something you see in the horizon, or not really?
I don't know.
Okay.
Because I have written, it's a bit all over the place, and I don't know. I am thinking about
it was not that long ago, right? Since you wrote.
Yeah, it was in July, and then in my head I'm like, oh, you should publish again this July, but it's like, no, just because you published last July.
Yeah.
So maybe, but I would do it a bit different. I wouldn't do just poems. I think I would also add some pages to help people with their own process, like more, yes, poems, but also more, if it would be about eating disorders, also more tips and tricks on how to improve your mental health, how to feel better about yourself, more in that sense. But first I'm gonna focus on work.
Yes, I understand. And also the move, it's also, it can be a good, who knows, it can be a good new environment for new ideas. You change completely your life. You were living in Brussels. You moved now to Geneva. Everything is different. New country, new people, same Corona. But you know, maybe it's it can help you, and I hope that it will help you. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for being here. Jimmy, I hope to see your book soon. And
Me too. I'm curious.
Yes, and
you.
thank you for being with us. I really liked talking with you. This will be available on our Instagram and on our Facebook and YouTube, so you can replay it how many times you want. And and yeah, just keep with us. We will have more things coming up, always happening in our site LARCLUB.x.com. So thank you for being with us, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao, guys.